人、FBI、CIA 这些我都可以。
FBI, don't move. Turn around. Hands on the wall. Stand up. Stand up.
Your friend's kind of in some trouble.
Okay, I see.
U.S. passport?
No, I'm Chinese.
Yeah. I'm just going down. Social security card?
Yes.
He was kind of awkward. He was very goofy. He does not read like a Chinese spy.
I at least had in my head this idea of a spy, of James Bond, somebody jumping out of airplanes. And that is not Xi.
$100,000. Is that monthly?
They pay me every 6 months.
This story is about aviation secrets, in particular, jet engine trade secrets. These are technologies that China wants very badly.
It's in the paper every day what China is alleged to be stealing en masse from the United States.
The playbook is simple: rob, replicate, and replace. We cannot tolerate a nation that steals the fruits of our brain power.
Xi was almost like a pack rat when it came to electronic information.
You have text messages, you have videos, you have photos, you have so much digital evidence about what he was doing.
What type of real spy is going to take a photo of a top secret blood oath? No one. Mr. Bean would do that. He was almost like a kid. I think it was clear Xi was a stand-in for some of the bigger conflicts that were going on between China and the United States.
His goal was to get U.S. citizenship, to become an intelligence officer. Xi was on that path.
So is there anything else you would like to report to or discuss with U.S. Army intelligence?
I think I report everything.
When I met Zhao Chun, I just thought he was this cute, quirky guy. He felt like an extrovert to me because he just, I don't know, was so goofy and would talk to anyone. He really did have a pureness to him. He just, seemed like he just wanted to do good. It feels like it would be authentic, but who's to say?
I've covered China for a long time, and Ji Chao-chun in many ways is kind of the prototypical college kid for most of this story. He goes to a very prestigious university, the Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and he studied aviation engineering. This is a very important topic for the Chinese government. Jet engines are one of the hardest to replicate technologies. These were developed primarily during World War II, and for many decades, the US and Europe have held a monopoly. China has expended a lot of effort and energy on stealing those technologies, or trying to. Xi is at a job fair about 6 months before he is set to graduate with his engineering degree, and he sees this kind of mysteriously labeled booth where there's a person who's purporting to be a professor recruiting for what he only describes as a confidential unit. It doesn't take long for Xi to realize that he's being recruited for the Ministry of State Security, China's premier intelligence agency.
我是谁？我就是你身边的这个背影，习惯了隐身。我是谁？我是国安警察。
MSS stands for the Ministry of State Security, and it's basically China's main intelligence agency. Think of a combination between the CIA and the FBI. The MSS doesn't really see a distinction between spying for the government and spying for Chinese companies and getting the kind of secrets they would be interested in their attempt to catch up and surpass their competitors. The vast majority of the actual MSS officers stay in China and never leave China, and so there's zero risk to them. Xi is unusual in that he is someone who was recruited in China and sent overseas really as an MSS agent.
There are two reasons the MSS was interested in Xi. One, he had technical knowledge that could help them identify trade secrets to steal. And the other was that he had a visa to travel to the US and he was clean. So in that sense, he's the perfect person to recruit to go spy in the US. They are really laying it on thick that this would be a really cool, kind of sexy, interesting opportunity. They're taking him out to dinners. They really wine and dine him. It was also something that appealed to his sense of helping his country.
He was into like the military. He was into this idea of being a spy, like a James Bond type spy in some very basic way. And I think that was a lot of the allure.
He travels to Nanjing, where the aviation trade secret theft is really kind of headquartered. That's where he gets his initial training. Once G signs with MSS, he's really excited about it. This might be the coolest thing that ever happened to him, to be recruited to be a spy. He sends his friend photos of his MSS registration form. And his friend even tells them, like, hey, are you supposed to be sending this to me? He is sending pictures of all of these $100 bills, US dollars, and he's laid them out over what looks like possibly his living room. The sense is this kid is so excited to tell somebody that he's a spy, and he's not supposed to, but he can't help himself. Mid-2013, G gets his visa, he travels to the US, and he begins studying at the Illinois Institute of Technology. G's daily life in Chicago to start is pretty routine. He goes to school, he works out, he plays games online at night. He hasn't done anything yet. His girlfriend comes to visit him in Chicago, his parents come to visit him, and he travels. They traveled a lot, they went out west. G was really enjoying his life in America. He had made friends. But he does have a secret.
I knew this case was going to be one of the highlights of my career. Economic espionage is a significant national security threat to the United States, to us. Hopefully, people around the country and people around the world understand that, hey, we should be taking this seriously. I learned a ton about the MSS because of this case, what the MSS does and how it's structured and its history over time. A lot of people who are being recruited have what's called, like, in this world, handlers, people who are experts who handle the individuals being recruited to make sure they're following the right processes and everything is going smoothly. He was being handled by Xu Yanjun, and Xu Yanjun's responsibility, we knew, was to steal aviation-related secrets. Xu's the one who's giving G directions about what he should be doing to help the MSS. In August 2015 is when we first see a very specific tasking from the MSS, and specifically Xu Yanjun. Xu reaches out to G and asks him to gather information about certain scientists in the US.
What Xu asked him to do was to log on to 3 different background check websites and download background checks on 9 scientists. These are commercial websites. You enter a credit card number, you type in a name. This is all kind of public, commercially available data. And these were mostly Chinese nationals living and working in the US for major defense contractors.
And what he was really trying to do was gather intelligence about scientists, especially scientists who worked on aviation-related technologies, to try to identify those scientists and help recruit them to steal American technologies and give them to the Chinese government.
This is a pretty simple task that G is given, but it takes G longer than it should have. Xu Yanjun is kind of pestering him, like, hey, do you have that stuff? Is it ready? Can you send it to me? G eventually gets the background checks together, and he sends them in an email to Xu with the subject line, midterm exams.
Now, G's facing a problem. He's here on a student visa, and that means once he's done with his schools, he's got to leave the country and go back to China. G comes up with a plan. He joins the military through this MAVNI program. It allows the military to recruit people who are not citizens but have special resources or talents that the military really needs. He's a fluent Chinese speaker. The benefit for him is that it really, really speeds up the citizenship process. If you join the MAVNI program, it could happen in 6 months or a year.
Remember that you fall under that, and also U.S. espionage laws, which is U.S. laws against spying. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So you have any questions so far before we begin here?
No. Okay.
Okay.
Things are looking amazing for G. He's figured out a way to stay in the United States. He's joined the military. He's on the fast track to become a citizen, get access to sensitive information. Things are going phenomenal, but then they come to sort of a screeching halt.
In April of 2018, a guy in a red car outside G's apartment gets out and accosts him on the street.
机敲陈吗？是的。你好。你好。我姓陈。你好。我有什么能帮你吗？我是你方便讲空话吗？什么？我是有一些事情跟你讲。什么？你是？我是南京的朋友叫我来的。哦，懂了。南京的朋友，所以你方便讲空话吗？我不大概多久呢？
The man tells G that his friend from Nanjing, Xu Yanjun, is in trouble.
听说你知道他最近也发生一点事，我不知道，很久没和他联系过。OK， 这样，因为是他们叫我过来的，跟你谈话。
G travels with the man to a hotel room in downtown Chicago. The man shows G a news article stating that Chinese spy arrested in Belgium at the request of the United States. G's main handler, Xu Yanjun, he was increasingly disgruntled at work, and he starts taking bigger and bigger risks to gather trade secrets from abroad. He winds up traveling to Europe, and he gets caught. The person G's talking to is saying that he's an MSS officer as well, and they need to figure out how Xu Yanjun got caught and how deep the penetration of this spy network has gone.
但是你有没有发过一些很那个 secret 的资料给他们，然后给他们美国定住了？没有。
These are not totally friendly interviews. G is kind of on the back foot.
我就是想让他们知道我是可以完全配合他们。OK， 好了，我跟他们。
And thus begins this relationship between G and this guy who he thinks is his handler, but actually is an undercover FBI agent. The FBI agent is wearing a wire, so all of it's recorded. There's 3 meetings, one in April of 2018, one in May, and then one in September. G is incredibly forthcoming. In a weird way, he's kind of eager to show that he was good at his job, thinking that this guy is his new boss. He's got these big ambitions for what he's going to go on to do once he gets into the army and once he gets his clearance.
基本上 FBI、CIA 这些我都可以去，NASA 也可以去，都 FBI 的东西你大概知道。就是如果我可以 apply 他们的岗位。
The FBI undercover asks him to sign a receipt on which is written in Mandarin, like receipt for MSS spy payment.
然后我再签了字，对，然后就可以了。
The signal to effect the arrest would be that G signs another of these payment receipts. And that would be the moment where the FBI would knock on the door and arrest him. The problem was the FBI had planned for everything except in the room there was no pen.
我答下面让他送一个笔箱了。我觉得就是门口的 housekeeping 那些人应该有。门口的。
So the undercover had to go into the hallway. Now he's given a pen by another member of the arrest team.
Excuse me. Do you have a pen? There's no pen in my book.
He signs for the money that he's given for his work. The FBI go in and then arrest the undercover. I mean, pretend to arrest him.
FBI, don't move. Wait, this is wrong. Turn around. Up. Hands on the wall. Stand up. Hands on the wall.
But you can hear the undercover actually kind of scream in mock terror, I guess, as he's arrested.
Chen Jin. Is that right there?
Yes.
Is that your name?
Yes.
Do you speak English?
Then they bundle him out of the room, and then these 2 FBI agents sit down at the table with G and start to have a conversation with him.
We're going to talk for a minute.
Okay, sure.
Your friend's kind of in some trouble.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
We're going to figure out what's going on here.
Okay, sure.
The ruse is basically okay, this guy that we just arrested, he's been working with the MSS. Why are you talking to him?
So we think he's in contact with, are you familiar with the Ministry of State Security in China?
What is that? The Ministry of what?
Like the state police?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he is really connected or intertwined with basically spies.
Okay.
Over there.
Yes.
And he like acts on their behalf.
Okay.
In the United States. So that's why.
Right.
That's
why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
There's some effort being made to see if G will cooperate and maybe become an asset for them.
You've never had any interactions with
No.
that organization?
No.
He doesn't decide to do that, and then they arrest him.
27-year-old Ji Chao-kun. He is being held right now in the Metro Correctional Center in the Loop. If convicted, he faces up to 10 years in federal prison.
At this time, Xu had been extradited from Europe and was in jail in Ohio. Ji was in jail in Chicago, and they're both headed for trial. As it often does, China denied all the allegations. China will often accuse the U.S. of, kind of manufacturing these details and making things up.
美方的有关指控纯属捏造。
In private, however, China was lobbying behind the scenes to get these two guys back.
I've been involved in some of the bigger cases in Chicago. I've tried a lot of racketeering cases, complex fraud trials, murders. I represented Harvey Weinstein in his trial, and I've done everything in between. But this was my first, representing an alleged spy. I don't want to say outside of my comfort zone because criminal law is criminal law, but it was definitely a challenge I wanted to take on.
The first time I met G was at the MCC Chicago. It's both a jail and prison here, a few blocks away from the federal courthouse, and it's a giant triangle-shaped building with little slits of windows, and it's sort of ominous and foreboding. And there was no doubt he was nervous and scared, I think, in that moment. I saw him probably weekly, more or less, if not more often, some weeks over the course of 4 years, and developed a very close relationship with them.
I went to meet with G. I think Ryan came with me, and we just hit it off. I liked him right away, and I think one of the things that he was concerned about was whether or not I would be comfortable representing somebody who was charged with essentially spying on the United States. And I certainly had no problems with the allegations in the case and told him that that is not a problem.
G was charged with several crimes. They included conspiring to act as a foreign agent in the U.S., acting as a foreign agent in the U.S., committing wire fraud, and then lying to the U.S. government.
G always maintained his innocence, was clear that he wanted to proceed to trial, and we were going to proceed to trial.
There was a great deal of evidence that made us say this is going to be hard.
We had his literal registration form registering as the MSS, him signing a receipt that says MSS, which showed that he knew he was part of the MSS.
We tried to show that he was manipulated, that he was young, that he was naive, that he really didn't do anything here that would be tantamount to spying. We weren't dealing with issues of national security. We weren't dealing with classified information. We just weren't. We were dealing with background reports you could get off Spokio.
Most of the scientists who were part of the list that Xi was collecting information about, we had most of them testify at the trial, and we saw them really as victims of this conduct. They had their personal information collected by a foreign spy agency, and they were going to be targeted.
Was G contacted by members of the MSS? I think the government proved that. Was he planning on being a long-term overseas asset? I don't think so, not for a second.
Who paid for G's defense?
His family.
Is there any reason to think that the Chinese government paid?
Not for me.
Typically, we say a jury will deliberate for about a day for every week of trial. So we were expecting something like 2 days of deliberation. But they came back quickly. When I heard the first charge, guilty, then I felt pressure and anxiety release because that was our main charge and he'd been found guilty.
Guilty on all counts except for the wire fraud counts. He was found not guilty of those charges. And then it was off the sentencing. And I think that the government, if you look at their sentencing memorandum, 80% of it is about what China is alleged to be stealing en masse from the United States. That was what they wanted the judge to focus on. But at the end of the day, I disagreed with that. What was fair, what wasn't, that's not, I have my opinions on it for sure.
typically, when someone is caught as a spy in another country, they're expelled. I mean, there's this idea that everyone does it. We want our spies to not be thrown in prison in other countries. But targeting companies animates this idea that it goes outside the bounds of traditional espionage.
The FBI wanted to set an example with these guys, and they did. Xu Yanjun gets 20 years in prison, Ji Chaochun gets 8 years in prison. Kind of the last thing we were expecting to see very late in the Biden administration, that both of them would be sent back to China.
Tonight, Xi and his convicted Chinese spy handler are part of a spy swap with China, resulting in the return of 3 Americans long held by Beijing, a couple of them also accused as spies.
There's what he was charged for and what he was convicted for, and then there's kind of what could have been. Had Xi not gotten caught, what would his path look like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line? Let's say he wound up working for a major aerospace company. Who knows what his career could have looked like?
We want to be very careful about having preconceived notions about what a spy looks like.
Most people don't live in the world of espionage. We think of it as an issue that's kind of out there somewhere. That's for the spy agencies. When it comes to trade secret theft, however, it could be the person next to you, and you'd have no idea. There's almost no way to know, and that's the really troubling, scary part.